There we are, bang on time well, it's 5 o'clock with me, but different times with everyone else. But we are back with NFA Live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am joined, as always, by Ben from Into the Cryptoverse. Hello, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, thanks. Very good. And by Rob from Digital Asset News. Rob, how are you, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
Thanks for being here. So a couple of things first to flag up. Firstly, this is happy 100th episode of NFA Live, guys. The three amigos have
That's pretty accurate.
doing this for the 100th time. Yeah, that's something our team knocked up. But yeah, gosh, can you believe it? 100 episodes. That's about 2 years, isn't it? Give or take.
Yeah, man, it's been time sure flies, doesn't it? I mean, just a little bit ago, we were talking about how much Bitcoin's going to go up and it's going to keep going. And now here we are round tripping our bags yet again.
Yep, 100 episodes, nothing ever changes. And I'm also feeling quite pleased with myself that I didn't get caught out by daylight saving time in the US, because you guys are now an hour ahead. Is that right? Your clocks have moved forward.
Right.
Well, mine doesn't change. It's just you guys catch up with me.
Okay. we all adjust to Rob time. Well, it's
time, yeah.
It's a miracle that we made it, but here we are. So this, I guess, is what you call an interesting time in the crypto market. Sentiment really, every week I think, can it get lower than this? And then the following week it does just that. It is very bearish territory out there. It's a bit of a struggle at the moment, I think, but there's still a lot going on. There's still a lot to look forward to. So, I mean, let's kick off. I want to first ask just quickly, Ben, I'm going to ask you, but Rob, feel free to chime in as well on this one. CPI yesterday, Consumer Price Index data, that came in slightly lower than expected. So I'm just interested to get your thoughts on it. And is a soft landing still in play, even with everything else that's going on?
I mean, anything's possible. I think that, you always have to consider all outcomes. And I think the good news with CPI going down is that it maybe helps to provide at least some confidence that we're not seeing a second wave of inflation. I've always been of the opinion that we're not repeating the 1970s, where we just get like three waves of inflation back to back. But again, it's probably premature to sort of ring the victory bell on that yet, because we're kind of in the phase where we're getting into the pain. Like the markets are going down. It's been a long time coming. And I guess the question is like, how long are they willing to let that go on for before they start to intervene? And if they don't intervene soon, then, it should allow inflation to really just kind of come back in and settle down much lower. If they intervene and they turn the printers back on, then it's always possible you have another wave of inflation, which could then certainly lead to a hard landing. But I would say the reason it's not the 1970s is because in all of those cases where you had sort of a secondary or even a tertiary wave of inflation, it was actually after about a year or two of the unemployment rate going down, whereas we've just spent the last 2 years watching the unemployment rate go up. So I don't really think it's going to be a repeat of the 1970s. It might be more similar to, there's two time frames that I think it might be more similar to. One is like 1989 to 1990. We saw interest rates minus the 2-year yield looks very similar back then as it does today. And then also maybe even like 1981 when Reagan took office. When Reagan took office in 1981, he actually was taking office right as, and they basically got inflation under control almost immediately. But back then, inflation was a lot higher when he took office, I believe, than it is today. So you could argue that it looks more like that. And that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Like, I think it looks a little bit more like that. And so I think what's going on is, Trump took office and he's a real estate guy. He wants yields to come down. And I think he's sort of measuring his success on where yields are. And I know a lot of guys in the real estate market, and it's a ghost town for a lot of people in the real estate market. A lot of deals just aren't happening in the same way they were happening back in 2021. That doesn't mean there's nothing. It just means that it's a lot harder to come by. So I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to introduce, get a lot of this policy front loaded that he's talked about for a while, front load it, cause a lot of uncertainty. That allows the stock market to go down. But because the stock market goes down, it allows yields to go down. So the fact that yields are going down is ultimately a good thing for a lot of sectors that have been hammered the hardest over the last few years. And I think the hard part now is just knowing if the Fed pivoted too early, too late. We won't know until a couple of years. My base case right now, though, is, and it has been sort of like, the market drops between February OPEX and March OPEX, such options expiration. And then there should be, at least if it's over, then even in that case, I still think there would be a counter trend rally sort of in the Q2, Q3 timeframe. Because I do think it would take a while for it to become obvious that the unemployment rate is going parabolic, right? I mean, it's been mostly steady for a while. I think that would take some time. So I'm kind of expecting continued weakness for, another week or two, and then maybe some finally some better sentiment sometime out later on in the spring, as some of the uncertainty dies away, and then we'll figure out if it's a soft landing in Q4. So I think it's a little too early to know, honestly. I'm trying to be optimistic, but the constant flip-flopping on tariffs and all that stuff, like, I know a lot of business owners, that's really affecting them. And what they've told me is it's not as much of like if they just implement the tariffs. It's just the constant changing of the tariffs that I think that's what makes it so hard. Because, like, how do you plan for that as a business owner if you need to import a lot of these things, and, like, you go to buy it, by the time it arrives, and you're all of a sudden you have like a 25% surcharge, then everything that you thought was going to be in profit when you sell it to people that have already created these purchase orders, now you're taking a loss, and you already signed it to them that you were going to sell it at this price. They're not concerned about the tariff, but it obviously affects your bottom line. So I think that's the biggest issue right now. Whenever that's done, whenever we are past the tariff headlines, I'm guessing there's going to be a counter trend, because the market will try to remain optimistic until it just can't, and I think that's kind of the thing holding markets down right now. And I'm expecting it to change within the next like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when, if you're a business owner and you can't really know what's going to happen next, what's around the corner, which, as you say, is exactly what's happening, this uncertainty, then I guess your sort of default mode is to do nothing, because what can you do?
Right.
If it's so, yeah, there definitely seems to be this sort of stasis, doesn't there, where people are just, as you say, kind of waiting to see if we get any clarity around it, as I guess we eventually will. But it's very confusing and uncertain times. And I guess if you tie that in with a chart that Nick has brought up on our news show a couple of weeks running now, which I should have to hand really, but is of inflation expectations being the highest that they've been in decades. I guess it's no surprise really that markets are suffering, and obviously if markets in general are suffering, you can bet that crypto is going to be suffering perhaps the most, which is certainly the case. Rob, is there anything you want to add on this? I mean, are you, for instance, what are your thoughts on these potential rate cuts? Because I was looking at the CME earlier. There's still above a 60% chance that we'll get at least 3 rate cuts this year. But I think the consensus is that they will begin in June. So do you think that's people being optimistic that things will improve and therefore the Fed will feel comfortable cutting, or people maybe being pessimistic that maybe by that point things will be so bad the Fed will have to cut rates in order to try and just juice the markets a bit?
Yeah, on that one, I'll take a backseat, but I'll just want to mention about what Ben was talking about as far as what do you do as a business owner? When you're taking a look at these imports and exports, because you know that the prices are potentially going to go up pretty high. The smart business owners right now, what they're doing is they're importing a whole hefty amount of those things, because they say, well, if these go into effect, what I need to do is I need to stock up. That's when you take a look at the export-import, the percentage changes. You can see a lot of these businesses are going, okay, well, I don't know what Trump's going to do. I don't know if he's playing 4D chess or if he's playing tic-tac-toe. Whatever he's doing, I'm going to make sure that I have enough of the product so I can ride out this storm. And then we take a look at really what it comes down to. And it's interesting what Ben said about, in the next 2 weeks, we can see what's going to happen. On April 2nd, those reciprocal tariffs go into effect. So that is going to, and we'll talk about this later, but that is essentially, Trump is saying is, look, if you want to put tariffs on us, that's fine, but it's going to be a reciprocal amount. If you want to do steel at 25%, we'll do steel at 25%. If you want to do rugs, we'll do 10%, and you guys do 10%. That's fine. If you don't want to play this game, lower the tariffs, and we'll lower the tariffs with you. It's reciprocal. You're not going to take advantage of us anymore. So with those two things, I can see. And then as far as like the recession, it's anybody's guess. I'll leave that up to the masters of macro, which I am not. So I'll take my hat off on that one. And as far as rate cuts, I sure hope so, because that would be great. But to talk about real estate, it is tough because the rates are so high. But if there are, especially if you're in Florida right now, there are massive, massive deals to be had as the prices are dropping. But people don't feel that, because I still feel like we're kind of in what we call a rolling recession, where there's just different sectors that are taking a big hit and another big hit and another big hit. So recession totally, that's up to the National Bureau of Economic Research to figure out.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, chaps. All right. I want to get your thought. I want to switch to something a little more crypto related now, and get your thoughts on the crypto summit that happened last Friday. A whole load of crypto industry bigwigs trooped along to the White House, sat down with the Donald himself, and there seemed to be a lot of talk, but not an awful lot said. But I'm interested to hear what your guys' thoughts on it. Rob, starting with you, what did you make of this summit thing? Was it a big moment for the industry, or was it hot air, or was it somewhere in between?
It's exactly what you said on the last NFA live show. I think it's going to be a lot of hot air, and you were 100% correct. So when everybody sat down there, I don't think, and correct me everybody in the comment section, but did Michael Saylor say one word at that event? I think he's one of the most influential people there, and he just had to take a back seat as they rolled out FIFA and talked about FIFA, and there's some more FIFA. And yeah, I mean, it was a good moment for everything, and everybody can speculate on that. But in the grand scheme of things, maybe it was just good to get the ball rolling, because not everything happens in one specific time frame. But I was surprised at how big of an effect it had on the markets for a short time, and then everything pretty much retraced, and that was it. It was like just another day in crypto. So I just saw it as another dog and pony show. And until we really get things really moving, which isn't going to happen until the rest of 2025, I didn't really care too much about it. It sounded good, but like you said, it was hot air. And this Bitcoin strategic reserve, we'll see how that rolls out. Maybe later on, as far as game theory and other nation states buying into it, great. But right now, for me, I just look at this as like a buying opportunity, because everything's in the toilet. And the sentiment is, I don't know if we're at fear or extreme fear, but the sentiment that I get, I don't know if you guys feel it the same way, but it seems like it's totally negative, and we're so over.
Definitely getting that sentiment. Ben, what were your thoughts on the summit? Did you take away anything else from it? Are you are you feeling this bearish sentiment as well? Is this as bad as you can remember it sentiment wise?
I didn't watch the summit at all.
See, didn't waste your time.
That says it all, doesn't it?
I mean, like, anytime the government gets involved with anything, it tends to make that thing worse, honestly. So I think it would be better if the government gets its, he just gets out of crypto and doesn't even focus on it. I feel like crypto was better before governments got involved. I do think that a lot of that is and I've said this before, I think a lot of what we have focused on this cycle is very antithetical to crypto. And I mean, I think it's cool that, that crypto's at the point where it can be more so on the world stage, but it also can set up sort of unrealistic expectations, like, oh, the White House is going to go out and buy Bitcoin. And maybe they will, right? I mean, I don't even know that they won't, honestly. I mean, maybe that's ultimately what happens. But I also think that they lost the plot a little bit. And I mentioned this before, is, it started off as a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that was the focus. And I mean, I was honestly having a hard time agreeing with that. And then they made it, then they were talking about like a strategic crypto reserve and then a digital asset fund and all this other stuff. And then they launched the Trump meme coin and then the Melania meme coin. And you just kind of lose the plot. You kind of lose the plot if you're going to go do that. Had they not launched the meme coins, had they not brought in, all these VC backed altcoins, I think they would at least still have the plot, but they focused on the wrong things. And just like any new investor into crypto, you always focus on the wrong things your first cycle. And you could just consider this their first cycle, right? I mean, I think they probably will regret that, and they'll probably wish that they had just stuck with, with Bitcoin. That doesn't mean that you can't make money on altcoins. And I'm not trying to say that everything, I'm not trying to say that, that everything else is useless in the industry. What I am saying is that, I think this should have been the cycle. If we're gonna go the way of ETFs, which is antithetical to Bitcoin, and if we're gonna go the way of a strategic reserve, which I think to some degree is not really that great for Bitcoin, at least just let it be for Bitcoin, right? We don't need all these other ETFs this cycle. I feel like that could be something that comes later on. But again, I think we've sort of lost we lost our way in focusing on the wrong things earlier this year. And now, we're kind of paying the price for it in the market when the frothy stuff comes to the surface, like it did in January, with all the meme coins. It usually leads to corrections like this. We actually had a similar correction in Q1 of 2017. The only difference is that in Q1 of 2017, January was weak and March was weak, but February was really strong. This time, it's all been weak, right? It's been weak basically for the entire first quarter. And maybe the reason why February was so much weaker than normal was because of all this uncertainty with tariffs and whatnot that we've seen. I believe that, and the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been like, there were similar discussions, I think, about tariffs and whatnot during Trump's last presidency, but he didn't talk about them as much until 2018. Right. So he talked more about tariffs, I think, in 2018, not 2017. So when he took office, there wasn't as much uncertainty immediately. There also wasn't, the Department of Government Efficiency laying off a lot of federal workers. Right. Again, so I think there's a lot more uncertainty right now than there was back in 2017. And so that time in February 2017, when markets did really well, they didn't really do that well this February. So it's led to sentiment being a little bit lower. So I do think there's a lot of fear right now. I just checked the fear and greed indicator. It's actually at 45. So it's actually not as low as I was thinking. But I think whenever the tariffs end, not like whenever the tariffs end, just whenever the policy uncertainty ends, I think sentiment will start to pick back up for a little while.
Yeah. Let's hope so. It's there are parallels with previous cycles, I think, but so much is different as well, and I guess it kind of works from both ends of the spectrum, didn't we? We didn't have spot ETFs for Bitcoin and Ethereum last cycle, but we also didn't have the capability for anyone to make their own meme coin. and for all those meme coins collectively to just act as a sort of drain of liquidity and overall morale on the market, I think. So yeah, this time in many ways really is different, I think.
I think it's a healing process. I mean, even a lot of exchanges right now are delisting a lot of the meme coins they listed just a few months ago. So look, it's a healing process. It's a necessary but painful component of the cycles.
Yeah. Hey, one quick thing on that meme coin, the delisting. I find it just odd of how righteous that these centralized exchanges were when they would talk about listing the different components that they need to see. And then all of a sudden they were listing Trump and Melania coin like it was going out of style, like there was no problems whatsoever. And then all of a sudden they're like, whoopsie. And there's no high and mighty. It is annoying.
You're right, man. Like that was it was so hypocritical, for them to do that. And then now you got some of these leaders of these exchanges sort of like tweeting out things like, oh, we should focus on longer term stuff. But it's like in January, they were giving step-by-step guides on how to launch meme coins. So it's just, they go where the money is. That's basically all that you need to know.
That at the end of the day, that's it. That's what decides whether something gets listed or not, doesn't it? Like, is there going to be trading volume? Is there a return on this for us? And if the answer is yes, you can be sure it's got a much better chance of being listed.
Yeah, right. And a lot of the ones getting delisted now are probably just because the money's gone. It's dried up. They're not making money from it anymore. So why keep them?
Yeah, it's that the money's gone. The VCs already made their funds, and they already drained the maximum amount from all the people, from the retail. Guy, I want to just give a shout out to your video you just did. I think it was yesterday, about manipulation in the market. It's quick. It's like I think it's under 20 minutes. But what you said in that video about not just what we see, but in the banks and how it correlates, it was like, well, this is obvious. So if everybody's like on the fence about what should I get into, like real utility or try to gamble it away, just watch that video. You're going to lose. I hate to tell you if you do the other way.
Yeah, the crime that continues to be sort of rampant in TradFi has, unfortunately found its way into, or has long ago found its way into the crypto market. And I guess a big consequence or a big cause of that is the fact that the market's been unregulated for so long. There's manipulation in all markets, and I think one of the examples we gave was manipulation by a sort of cartel of banks in the Forex market. And Forex is actually pretty heavily regulated. So it's hardly surprising that there's chicanery and shenanigans going on in crypto, but it does not help. It does not help, and it doesn't help the perception either. And I think perception is a big part of why we're sort of experiencing this bad sentiment as well, because I think so many people's already negative opinions of crypto have been reinforced by all the chicanery we've seen going on in the last few months. Yeah,
true, very true.
Okay, let's move on. So I want to ask you guys, this sort of leads on from what Ben was talking about a little earlier in terms of the uncertainty that we're seeing in the market. But this uncertainty, it keeps on piling up, doesn't it? You've got the tariffs, the will they, won't they on the tariffs. You've got, almost in a larger sense, but related to those tariffs, what we're almost seeing the breakdown of the post-war order, in that the United States is falling out spectacularly with its allies. With some of its longest standing allies, and seemingly cozying up to one of its longest standing enemies. But we won't go too far in that. There's obviously everything that's happening with Ukraine. There's even talk of the US annexing Canada and Greenland, etc. So we're in the midst of what I'm sure the professional macro analysts would call an uncertainty shitstorm. So I think that's the term anyway. So accurate. My question to you guys is, how are you positioning yourselves for this? Are there any adjustments that you're making? Are there any assets that you're sort of targeting, or are you doing nothing and kind of sitting back with the popcorn and watching it all unfold? Ben, can I throw this to you first?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like it made sense there was going to be de-risking after January 20th. I think we talked about that actually a lot back in Q4, because we were like, look, you're going to have your pricing in perfection. You're having, deregulation, Gensler resigning, a strategic Bitcoin reserve getting priced in. It makes sense to see some type of de-risking after that. And I remember Q1 2017 was also kind of bad too. What I think is a lot of it's going to depend on what happens next week with the Fed. So I'm curious if the Fed is going to end quantitative tightening next week, given this market sell-off, or if they're just going to say, let the pain continue. So I would argue that if QT continues after next week, you will likely still see alts underperform Bitcoin. I'm sort of just basing it on that. It's like an if-then statement. I don't know what they're going to do next week. Like, I don't know if they're going to end QT or not. I don't think they're going to cut rates. If they end QT, then it's possible you could see relief with altcoins especially on their Bitcoin pairs. Last cycle, when QT ended, there was like a 2-week rally by altcoins against Bitcoin, and then they ended up coming back down, but they ended up like just double bottoming a few months later. So it kind of, to some degree, it depends on what the Fed does. And I think that if QT continues, even after this drop, like if Powell comes out next week and says, we're going to continue, which there's a chance he does. The last meeting, he said that reserves are still ample. I'd like to know if he still thinks, what he still thinks about that, given what's happened recently. But if he comes out and says that QT is going to continue, then I think you're going to see altcoins go to those range lows that I've talked about before, right? Where they bleed out against Bitcoin to the same level they bled out against Bitcoin in 2019 and in mid 2017. So I think you could argue that Bitcoin dominance should continue higher until that time. So if you're thinking about positioning, you're probably still better off with Bitcoin than 99.999% of the rest of the crypto market until monetary policy changes. So that's where I am. Like, I think that's what makes the most amount of sense. If you look at modern portfolio theory and just look at what sort of maximizes your risk-adjusted returns right now, it does suggest having like 30% cash. Like, it's not zero. And I think you could argue that there's some, and again, like, making that argument a couple of months ago was certainly a lot more effective than making it today, because now, well, the markets have already dropped, a considerable amount since then. But I think, having some powder in case the market continues to drop. What happened in 2017 actually is Bitcoin tested the 2016 high. And so before it actually bounced, it tested the 2016 high. Well, the 2024 high is 73K, right? So there's always a chance it goes down there. There's always a chance it goes into the 60s if it back tests sort of the lower high structure from 2024. So, I think it makes sense to have somewhat, some positioning for those outcomes. I'm not saying it makes sense to bet the family farm that's what's going to occur, but I still think crypto exposure should mostly be limited to Bitcoin until quantitative tightening is over. And this cycle has been full of people trying to front run that and trying to say, and look, there's been plenty of opportunities with altcoins. It's not like none of them have done well. Plenty of them have done well. But the problem is that it's never been a durable rally by the altcoins against Bitcoin. It's always just been a few weeks. And then, sort of the reality that monetary policy isn't changing continues to set in. And then those altcoins give back all those gains. By the way, a lot of altcoins have already given back all of their post-election result gains, right? They're back below where they were November 5th. Bitcoin has not gone down there yet. So that's what I'm thinking. That's how I'm navigating this market. I wouldn't get too ambitious about altcoins until there's some type of pivot by the Fed, right? And that doesn't mean you have to wait for pivot to go, all in or something on that stuff. But I think it makes sense to manage expectations. And last cycle, altcoins bled against Bitcoin until quantitative tightening ended, and so far this cycle has been the same thing.
Yeah. Rob, what about you? Are there any other, are you thinking to about picking up more BTC? Are you thinking about maybe gold? How are you navigating this uncertainty?
Nah. Well, as far as like with Bitcoin, I've already been picking that up. But the thing with alts and Ben, I you look at it as like it's like one of those assets that you get and you hold and you hold and hold on, and then you sell at some point, like during like this massive bull run that's supposed to happen in 2025, right? But when we take a look at alts, and some of those, the ones that do really well with alts are the ones that realize that they're, if you put in your mind that they're all going to go to zero at some point. So when they run up, you're supposed to take profits. The problem here in our market is that everybody gets bamboozled by the people that say, no, this is the next great one. And this one's going to have real utility. And this one really does something. And they do, some actually do have utility. The problem is that people get married to their alts and they don't sell them. And there's the few people that do it, they do pretty well. The ones that actually, this is not going to go well, but the meme coins that some people get into, and they realize that they can, once they double, they sell half. If it doubles again, you sell another half and just keep going like that. You can do those things in this market. But to de-risk, like we talk about, like Ben says, Bitcoin is probably your safest bet right now. Now, does that mean that's going to double or triple or quadruple? Over time, it will. But for me, I just look at it as like, okay, well, if I do a little bit of, most of it in Bitcoin, and I know that at some point I'm going to need cash. I'm going to need cash for my businesses anyhow. So I have to sit on that. And then for altcoins, maybe take a look at some of the ones that are, I don't know, just steal some information from Ben's website and take a look at the risk levels and see which ones are pretty low. I'll give you a hint. One of them is actually SWI. It's in the dumpers, but that's because there's not much data there. So for me, I look at it as like, okay, where can I be? And right now it's mostly Bitcoin. It's a cash. And there are some, I'm thinking of looking into alts at some point very, very soon. Because I think that we're going to start to even out as we get into like April, May, and June.
Okay. Well, that leads me quite nicely on to my next question, which could be interpreted as clutching at straws here. But are there any positives for Bitcoin and or for crypto that we should be on the lookout for over the next few, I'd say, sort of weeks and months? It's a bit of a vague time frame, but I want to sort of give it as much possibility, leave as much possibility for positive catalysts. Ben, you mentioned the end of QT being the sort of the necessary kind of first step. Are there any other sort of positives that you see maybe on the horizon that if they started being talked about, you would perhaps interpret as a signal that maybe the market is turning around?
I think the good news for Bitcoin right now is that it is still correlated to stocks, and obviously the Fed, politicians, the Fed, they're going to care about stocks. That obviously affects a lot more people. I think that the good news for crypto is that we're still just in an unfavorable time between now and March OPEX, which is basically a little over a week away. And so, we're getting closer to the end of that unfavorable seasonality. Okay, so if you look at all prior post-election years with the stock market, it tends to not do well for the first quarter of post-election years. This quarter has been worse than most post-election years, but it could mean that seasonality is we're just sort of a few weeks away, maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from more favorable seasonality. The other good news for crypto is that, while there have been a lot of layoff headlines, initial claims are still relatively low. They came in today, I think, at around 220,000 or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really that concerning until they hit 300K. I think as long as they're below 300K, the labor market is still doing relatively okay. So I've said this before, what I think is going to happen is that there's going to be there still could be weakness for another couple weeks. I want to be clear, and it could extend even into early April if the markets are sort of waiting to see where that labor market data comes in after you've had a full month of all these Doge layoffs, But I think the thing is that I do think that as you get out into the summer, I think there likely will be some better sentiment. You know how like in 2023 and 2024, we sort of talked about there would be like a summer lull, like a time where like markets don't go anywhere. Similar stuff happened in prior cycles, and I don't know why. And it actually happened in 2021 too. We had sort of that summer drop, but in 2017, the summer was actually good for crypto. After a pretty bad Q1, the summer was actually good. In left translated cycles, which there's always a chance that the top's it, right? There's always a chance. But even in left translated cycles, the summer can usually be good. It's sort of like the return to normal phase of a left translated peak. So I would say like their sentiment probably will get better in a few months. That I think the bigger question everyone wants to know is like, is it going to lead us to a new high or not? And that will depend on the labor market. So I would watch the labor market, and for now, the labor market still looks good. I mean, it sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy, but with all the layoffs all the headlines, but if I'm just going by the data and I say initial claims, they're still they're still in the low 200K range. So until that changes, I guess there's some reason to be optimistic.
Yeah. Okay, so watch the labor market. The labor market could be our white knight. Robert, is there anything particular that you're optimistic about? Anything that you think lies ahead that could be a positive catalyst for Bitcoin, for crypto?
I mean, Ben set it up pretty well as far as like what you want to take a look at, but I just remind everybody that we've been around, like Guy, you've been around longer than I think both of us, but in 2017, to have all these positive factors going into it, I mean, we wouldn't see it. It just all comes down to macro. I never would have thought that we'd have a Bitcoin pro Congress. I never would have thought that we'd have a president talking about it. I never thought that we'd have nation states buying it. I never thought that we'd have an ETF. I never really saw that going this well. I take a look at the markets and I just am kind of dumbfounded as to why the prices are what they are. Maybe it was just about people don't understand the difference between crypto and Bitcoin, we could say, or what actually happened with meme coins. Whatever it is, I still see things going pretty well. It's just, it all comes down to me, it comes down to the macro, but all comes down to tariff. If we can figure that out, then we'll be just fine. It's just getting that consistency, and that's not going to happen until April.
Yeah. Let's get past the tariff madness, past the tariff uncertainty. I, for one, am kind of looking forward to seeing what comes out of Congress. I think if we get stablecoin regulations, if we start to see stuff being passed in Congress, I think that would be reason, maybe not to go crazy, but certainly to maybe start looking forward to seeing some more development in crypto, because I think a lot of potential development, a lot of potential innovation is kind of still being held back. It's like, okay, Trump and his administration are pro crypto. They've got a bit of a funny way of showing it, but they are. But really, we're not going to do anything until there are regulations in place, because I think there must be so much residual trauma throughout the industry of the SEC just kind of knocking on the door of, perfectly legitimate projects. It's so, yeah, I guess kind of we need to see, and this goes back to what we were saying about the crypto summit, don't we? It's like, it's all very well people in a room talking and making positive noises about crypto, but until there's actually stuff on paper and, as a part of law, then maybe we should continue to hold our breath.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, let's see. I guess the thing is, there are positive things ahead. There are better times ahead. It's just so difficult to see that when you're in a situation like this where altcoins have bled out really badly. Even Bitcoin's been suffering, and sentiment is so low. It becomes very difficult to sort of see the positives and to remember that we've been here before, and it's turned around in the past. But I guess this is what sort of blood in the streets looks like. It looks terrible. It looks terrible at the time, and it's only with hindsight that you're like, maybe that was a big opportunity, or maybe that was the low, or however you want to look at it. Okay, just a couple more. I want to. We are weirdly, time is moving so quickly. We're almost at the end of Q1 of 2025. Just a couple more weeks left. What's been the biggest surprise of this year for you guys so far? Rob, I'll start with you.
The biggest surprise. No, there's so many, but I mean, the president calling out the strategic reserve and actually coming through was, I think, one of the bigger ones. But I think if I take a look at it and go back over the last, and I did this yesterday on the show, we took a look at dollar cost averaging over the last year or so. If you would have done this a year from March, like going back 4 years, going to March of 2020 to March of 2021, you would actually be up like on pretty much everything and pretty massively. I think Bitcoin, you'd be up a massive amount. You'd be up, I think, 400%. And then for Ethereum, you'd be up pretty well, I think over 258%, and ADA and so forth. And if you went back even before that, 2016, 2017, you were actually still up like 58%, somewhere there. But now if you go back a year, we've given up so many gains right now in the last year that it's surprising to see just how low things have gone. I take a look and I wonder how many people that are here are really, really Bitcoiners and just want to stick with that, or how many people are just like, I'm here for altcoins, I'm here for meme coins, and that's why it's over. And I think for those people, for those meme coins, it is. I just kind of surprised that people haven't kind of, moved to that direction of being more towards that utility in Bitcoin. So I just look at right now, I'm like, man, there's a lot of a negativity, which it's kind of confounds me. And when I see the downslope, there's only one thing for me to do. I just look at it and go, well, I'm not going to sell because that's selling into weakness. Why the hell would I do that? I can sit here and do nothing, which sometimes is actually the best thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I can do is I can actually start buying a little bit because we're down below 90. I mean, we're down at one point, we're at 78,000. So why wouldn't I buy a little bit more? But people don't get it. They just look at it and go, this is the worst, and they're out. And it kind of surprised me that we haven't moved past that point.
Yeah. Ben, what about you? What's been your surprise of 2025 so far?
Probably 3 presidents shilling meme coins. That's probably it. Trump, Malay, and then there was one in Africa. I can't remember which country, but
that's right.
I mean, I just didn't think.
Coins.
I mean, like, maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise, but I think that was kind of the biggest surprise that even at sort of the highest level, they will launch meme coins and then pretend like it's not a complete and utter scam.
Do you know what? I think for me, thinking about this question, I was, my biggest surprise of 2025, I think, was the Trump and Melania meme coins. But then when I thought about it a bit more, what surprised me more was the fact that I was surprised about the Trump and Melania meme. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, it just seems so... it just seems sort of almost ordained that we'd see this kind of grift. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too cynical after too many years in it. But yeah, I was surprised that I was still able to be surprised by some of the nonsense that goes on in this industry, even from the very top.
Yeah, never be surprised again. I think that's just the way people are.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said that last cycle. I'm pretty sure I said something along the lines of, I don't think anything can shock me anymore. And then it's like, crypto, I think, it'll always have something up its sleeve.
Yeah. Who knows? The next cycle, we'll see the Pope have his own meme coin. I don't know.
You heard it here first. Rob's already calling the shock of the next one. Okay, watch out for Pope coin.
Pope coin.
Okay, final question. I want to go back to this White House crypto summit that they had, and I want to ask a hypothetical question, if you like. Let's say Donald Trump asked you to host your own alternative crypto summit. Who would you ask along? Who would you have? I kind of felt that although there were some big industry leaders at the last one, it was very much sort of, representing, I guess, the sort of money corporate side of it, a certain, I don't know. I don't think it sort of accurately reflected the whole crypto industry, which you might argue is an impossible thing to do. But if you could organize your own alternative crypto conference, who would you have in attendance? Ben?
I mean, if it's at the government level, I would say nobody. They don't need to be involved. I would just stream some hour-long lecture about Bitcoin dominance to the entire nation and call
so basically, it would be Ben's channel on the government's website. That's what it would be.
No, but I mean, like, I think crypto conferences are great. I just don't think the government should be involved. That's my, and I think honestly, a lot of the people that I would argue, there's a lot of the people that probably would be a better reflection of the industry. Probably would also agree that the government shouldn't be involved, right? So maybe they wouldn't even want to go anyways. I don't know. I guess I'm just too pessimistic about government getting involved in things. I just feel like I feel like the market, the industries often do a lot better without government involvement. And so, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't answer. I wouldn't be like, oh, we should just get all these guys who launched altcoins to come and tell us what we should do, because obviously they're very self-interested in how they can make it so that they can dump, these large bags that they have. And then the reality is that a lot of the people there, a lot of industry quote unquote leaders who launch these altcoins, they never buy the altcoin. They just occasionally sell what they have, so yeah, I mean, I guess it's capitalism at its finest, but I do think that the government has no business being involved in the industry. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like that. They're going to be like, oh, well, it's a good thing. But the reality is that a lot of altcoins have struggled a lot this cycle. And I think what's really happened is I think that this entire cycle, that's what we focused on, right? We focused on how do we get this to the government level? How do we get this to be shilled in front of millions and millions of people? And so, the few altcoins that maybe that do have some actual real world utility that might be more useful than others, a lot of them get overlooked because there's just been this massive misallocation of capital into meme coins, probably caused by all the regulatory risk, as Guy was mentioning earlier, that we had in 2023 and 2024. So I think the industry wasn't able to grow in 2023 and 2024 from a fundamental level in the same way that it has in prior cycles because of all the regulatory scrutiny. I mean, it seemed like every week some different platform was getting sued by the SEC. And so then the industry ultimately focused on the things that it shouldn't focus on. So I get that. I know it's not really the answer that you're looking for, but I don't think the government should be involved. I wish they would get the hell out of our industry and leave crypto alone. And because you know what, we've had crypto now for what, 16 years, and it was great before the government got involved. And I just can't help but feel ever since the government got involved, it's kind of been down only.
Yeah, it's changed a lot, hasn't it? There doesn't seem to be that same sort of sense of kind of rebel spirit anymore, or if there is, it's very much diminished. And yeah, I guess a lot of people would say, as soon as something becomes, I don't think you could call crypto mainstream, but in a way, like governments getting involved is almost as mainstream as you get, doesn't it? And it's sort of like, as soon as something becomes mainstream, it becomes diluted. It becomes not what it was. It becomes crap. So yeah, maybe the alternative crypto summit should just be Ben's hour-long Bitcoin dominance lecture across all channels. We interrupt this program.
Conferences aren't bad. I just think that we don't need the government being involved. I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Ben. I think you're right. Rob, who would be at your summit, or would it be an empty room in protest, rather like Ben?
Well, two things. First of all, I disagree with Ben. I think we should have government involved because I think we need enforcement. And if we don't have enforcement, I mean that by like the FBI and the FinCEN. If we have all these hackers running loose and we're not protecting our people, what are we doing? And we've seen, and hacks are on the rise. We're seeing billions and billions of dollars. We're going to see it even more. I've had personal friends lose everything. And that's, of course, people say, well, that's their fault. They screwed up. So too bad. But as time goes on, we're going to see those types of attacks be more and more consistent and be more and more pervasive. And I think that if we don't have some type of other division, whether that be cybersecurity that can attack those other people that are attacking us, I think it's going to be a spiral, and a lot of people are going to lose. And they're not going to blame the hackers. They're just going to get these stories, and it's going to blame crypto. And crypto isn't the problem. The problem is these piece of trash individuals and groups that are stealing money from hardworking citizens, and that has to stop, or that has to be protected, or it has to be investigated and has to be prosecuted as much as possible. So on top of that, I'll say the people that I want to have at the symposium would be this picture that I just put up right here. I want these people there, and I want them to stream, and I want to talk about all the different problems that they have caused, and I want them to talk about how they did it, and I want to learn about what we should not do. So, I mean, this would be great for like a live stream. And we've got, it had to be from jail. But that's fine because he did it with Tucker Carlson, SBF. And he can say, how did you do that? Where did you screw up? And how did you get these things done? And Muskamsky and Do Kwon and Xavier and Sue, which I think, well, Alex is still out. Do Kwon, I think, is still out. And Carolyn Ellison, I think, just testified. I don't know if she's still in. And Kyle Davies and Sue Zhu, they're just walking free. So these are the things that I think we should have, and they can learn it. Kind of like the Catch Me If You Can guy. Tell us how you screwed everybody over, and then we can do what not to do and protect people. So that's what I have.
That would be a hell of a live stream. I would tune in for that for sure. Do you know what, Rob? I think given the egos of most, if not all, of those people up there, I can almost imagine them doing it. I can almost imagine them being like, yeah, I'll jump on that call.
I get more viewers and this and that. I think it'd be great to do like a live stream, but also do like X spaces so people can call in and tell these people that, hey, you took my life savings, or hey, you took my grandparents' life savings. And how do you have to say that? That would be great. Yeah, that would be, that's maybe something for next cycle. It's. I think you both make good points there. I take your point as well, Rob, about government involvement in terms of from a legislative point of view. And I mean, I guess you want the government to sort of maybe to get involved to an extent to say, okay, these are the rules, and then to withdraw entirely and be like, you have a framework. As long as you obey these rules, then we don't have to be involved anymore. That's the limit of our involvement. And you guys said it right. There's so much enforcement through regulation, but they were just targeting the wrong things. And that's what screwed everything up. If they would have targeted the right things, the right individuals, the right conspiracies that were going after people, then but they didn't. That's Gary Gensler. That's on Gary Gensler. Huge failure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, just for the record, I mean, if I was asked to host my own crypto summit, I'd be very interested to kind of go back to crypto's roots a little bit, and rather than hear from people in government and people with people who sort of got involved and made tons of money out of it, I'd really like to hear from some of the sort of people who were there earlier on. I'd love to hear from some of the sort of Bitcoin OGs. I think, it would be great to get Adam Back, one of the sort of key people in Bitcoin's history. Some people think he might have a claim to be Satoshi, although he denies it. I think it would be great to hear from him. I think it would be great to hear from someone like Jack Dorsey, who was, there was recently a pretty mad theory that was saying Jack Dorsey was Satoshi. I don't believe that, but he has been into Bitcoin for a very long time. Obviously, a very smart, successful guy. I think it'd be really interesting to hear from someone like him, especially as he's sort of, outside of the industry itself. I know he's got, is it square or block, I think it's called now. So, he's not entirely outside of it, but he's not sort of one of these people that you hear an awful lot from in terms of Bitcoin. I think it would be really interesting to talk to him. Whatever happened to Andreas Antonopoulos as well, the original OG Bitcoin educator? I think he's gone very quiet in the last few years. Probably just you would hope enjoying the fruits of his labors. But wouldn't that be a great thing? Maybe we need some of Bitcoin's original messiahs to come back, original people who were there at the very start. Maybe we need to hear from them again to remind us all what Bitcoin was like in those very early days. Because obviously, I've been involved, or I've been conscious of Bitcoin since sort of 2013, 2014. But it goes a lot back. It goes a lot further back than that, and I've only ever read about the history of it. So it would be fascinating, I think, to hear from those people who were there at the very beginning, who read the white paper in 2010 or 2011 and started playing around with it then. I think it would be good to get their input, because we've gone so far from the world they built around Bitcoin and crypto, I guess.
Yeah, be good reminder right now.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just having a look through to see if there are any particular comments to flag up. Shane is looking at putting his Bitcoin profits. Good to remember that there are plenty of people still in healthy profit from Bitcoin into EU stocks and Chinese stocks. That's an interesting if risky play, but I don't think anyone would have been talking about that recently, but now suddenly that's maybe not the worst idea. You're on mute there, Rob.
Yeah. I'm not a big equities guy. Maybe Ben's got some insight into that.
But I've been pretty bullish on the China stock market for the last few months, because it's so beaten down back in like late 2024. Maybe you could still argue it's relatively undervalued, but I mean, some of those companies went up a lot already. Like Alibaba just had a massive run off the lows. So, if anything, you'd probably want to wait for sort of another higher low again. The EU stuff, for a long time, I've put sort of equal amounts into low expense ratio index funds, one for domestic, so one for the United States, and then one for international. And ever since I've been doing it, for years and years and years and years, the US has always outperformed Europe, always. And I keep thinking at some point there's going to be a reversion there, and Europe will catch up, and at some point it probably will happen, but for the entire time I've been doing it, it never has happened. So I don't know. I mean, at some point it probably will, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I as someone said in the comments there, don't bet against the USA. All right. We'll finish with this one. I just want to refute this. Guy does not have a terrible hangover. Guys. This is just what being in crypto does to you. It knocks lumps out of you. So yes, I'm pleased to report that I do not have a terrible hangover. I just always look like crap. Okay. Well, on that note, guys, thank you so much for joining today. Thanks for your insights. It's been great to chat with you as always. Next week on Ben's channel.
Very nice.
Got that right. Great to see you. Hang on in there. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
See you. Okay.